Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Set my alarm for 9:10 a.m. this morning.
Done.
Okay, so there we have it. So interestingly, in the Battle of Kurukshetra, they did start off that at the end of the war, at the end of the day when the sun set, then they would be friends. And that's when Duryodhana, he kept 5 arrows that Bhishma Dev had given him to kill the Pandavas. And Krishna knew about it. So Arjuna went in the evening, and Duryodhana was very friendly. Oh, it's so nice to see you. Is there anything that you'd like? He said, you have those 5 arrows that he had to give him. But interestingly, toward the end of those 18 days of the Battle of Kurukshetra, they didn't stop fighting when the sun went down. They just kept fighting all the time. And all the rules eventually got abandoned. And it was just like a free-for-all. Anyone could kill anyone in any way they wanted. So it kind of broke down, it deteriorated. One would do, when Drishtadyumna took the head off of Dronacharya, he was born from the fire because his father had been disrespected by Dronacharya. So from the fire came Yukaseni, which was Draupadi, and Drishtadyumna. So when Drishtadyumna, when Drona heard that Ashwatthama was dead, which Yudhishthira had said it, he sat down and abandoned fighting. And he'd actually left his body before Drishtadyumna came, but Drishtadyumna came and took his head off. So then Ashwatthama, he was like, okay, if you're going to do that, then I'll do anything. So things rapidly deteriorated after that. But anyway, that was the etiquette. And Maharaj Bali was aware of that. And although he was in a position, it would have been good for him to have let his commanders just go ahead and kill all the demigods in one sense, because it would have strengthened his position. But he was cultured enough, well conversant with the arts of peacemaking and fighting. And so he received them well. Because Maharaj Bali is a Mahajan, he's one of the great devotees that we follow, you know. So he had that sukriti, that ability to behave in a very pious way. Which is interesting because normally a demon is somebody that's very impious. It's referred to in the Bhagavad Gita as Suchivrata. They're sworn to unclean work. So to be pious, to be a pious demon is an interesting combination. And eventually when it came to the crunch, Bali Maharaj was very happy to abandon everything and even offer his very body to the Lord, you know, Atmanivedanam, which is the hardest way to surrender, to give everything up. So interesting, so many nuances are there. It said that the Ramayana was quite straightforward because you had all the bad guys on one side and you had all the good guys on the other. So when they went to war, it was a no-brainer. And even when they did get killed, they were revived back to life, all the good guys. And all the bad ones were kept underwater because they brought this special Mukta Sanjeevani, which brought everyone back to life. So that the demons wouldn't come back alive, they held them all underwater. And then all the good guys came back to life. But with the Mahabharata, it was much more confusing because you had good guys on one side and bad guys on the other, all mixed up in amongst each other. And the Yadus were fighting against Krishna. And they were considered more intimate than Arjuna to Krishna and the different hierarchy of devotees. So the whole thing was very confusing. And here also we have a great devotee, a Mahajan, and he's the head of the demons. So he holds off the captains and commanders that are agitated, and and allows the demigods to speak. And then it seemed like it would be in their best interests. It may even have been that they planned that when the nectar is obtained, that we'll take it and not let the demigods, in the same way as the demigods were going to do that. And ultimately, if you follow Lord Narayan's plan, he has the advantage of knowing past, present, and future. So if he's making a plan, it's not based upon what's going on in the present. It's based upon what he knows is going to happen in the future, and therefore he knows that these things need to be in place for it to take place. So, so you can imagine for ourselves, if we knew what Krishna's plan was for us, well, one thing we would definitely know, we'd know that whatever Krishna's plan was for us was going to be the best thing. We'd know that, because nobody knows better than Krishna what's best for us. Then the second thing is we would know that whatever our plan was probably going to be the wrong one, based upon our limited senses, tendency to make mistakes, cheating, and subject to illusion. This would flaw our ability to make a plan. So then the plan would be, well, how do I become more aware? So with a map, you may not be able to confirm that the part of the map that's showing you where the streets are in Australia is correct or not. But what you can do with the map is you can hone in on that area that you are very well acquainted with, which may only be a few miles. It says go down Brockett's Brae, and you go over this little bridge, and you know that already. So then, because the map is so accurate, then you can start to have faith that when the map is speaking about things which are beyond your ability, then you can accept, okay, well, it's really accurate here, so why would it be inaccurate there? So for us, we've given up breaking the principles. We've given up so many things that we were accustomed to doing, and it's working for us. In our own limited way, we're appreciating that plan is working for us, and that the ultimate plan is that Srila Prabhupada wants to direct people and give them the knowledge through his books. And as we read and apply it, then we become more enthusiastic and confident to share that with others. So that's naturally what should happen. So yeah, the first thing is, what is Krishna's plan for us? Well, Krishna's plan is Lord Chaitanya's plan, and Lord Chaitanya's plan was to give everybody prema, Krishna prema. That's what he wanted. He wanted to give the highest to the lowest. That's one of the poses you'll see the deities in sometimes. That's what it's indicating, Patita Pavana. He's giving the highest. And the highest is another subject. But whatever love that you can find descriptions of, you find there's a hierarchy of love. And the highest love is what Lord Chaitanya is giving. So by reading the books and discussing amongst ourselves and becoming acquainted with the knowledge, we can start to become more aware of what the actual plan is. Madhura Kandamini is very nice because it shows you what the territory is that you're traversing and what it is you're going to be coming up against, and how the different levels of purification take you to different levels of unsteady devotional service, until, like we were reading this morning, your devotional service becomes nishta, becomes fixed. And as it becomes fixed, then the terrain becomes smoother to navigate across. And eventually there's an incline where you become inclined to devotional service spontaneously. So that incline is going down. So there's no effort. Your activities are propelling you. You're singing, you're dancing, you're chanting, you're doing service. And the activity is giving you energy, not taking energy, which is completely counterintuitive. People are all trying to save their energy by doing things in sloppy ways. And devotional service is exactly the opposite of that. The more attentive we are, the more we can become conscious and apply ourselves, the more energy we get from doing the activity. So the Vedic etiquette enjoins grihe shatram api praptam vishvatam akuto bhaya. Be nice to your enemies. Of course, the reason why we do that is interesting, actually. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that when others are criticizing you, remember that nobody can harm you unless you harm yourself. So he says when they're doing that, become introspective and look into your own weaknesses. So that's counterintuitive. That if you want to avoid being put into a situation where you're going to be in difficulty, then by putting aside your animosity and not seeing people as enemies, even when they're criticizing you or attacking you in some way, rather than the knee-jerk reaction, which is just to defend yourself and counter-attack. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is saying, nobody can harm you unless you harm yourself. So if you don't stoop to that level, and you just, you look at the whole situation and you think, okay, well, I had to go through a certain amount of karma, and these people have been acting as vehicles for that karma, and if they're removed, the karma will still have to come, the difficulty will have to come via something else. So rather than me identifying with that particular person being the cause of it, let me see that he's just acting as an instrument for me to receive my karma. And I am the one who's to blame because I must have done something in the first place to deserve it. And then by doing that, although that would seem like, well, that's going to make me really negative and depressed, and I'll lose my self-esteem. Actually, what it does is it protects you. It wouldn't seem like it, right? It doesn't seem like that's what it would do. But if you try it out, you'll find that it actually does. And so that's the culture of the Vedic culture, is that you don't Tatena Kampamshi Shukshimana is considered the essence of our philosophy. It says that a person tolerates all the sufferings and sees them as just a small reaction, a token reaction of what is due. And he continues on in his devotional service, paying obeisances from his heart all the time to the Lord. And then in due course of time, it becomes his rightful claim to go back to Godhead. So that's how you watch out for yourself. That's how you protect yourself. Any questions or comments?
You know, this is an interesting verse. Yes, an interesting verse. So I was, it caught my attention when you'd said that the demigods could have been killed by Maharaj Bali. But also you mentioned about Narayan knowing past, present and future. So being like the Supreme Personality, he can't sort of be foiled in any way, his plans. So was there ever any chance that the demigods could have been killed? You know, I find this a difficult thing to believe, because the Lord's plans can't be interfered with in any way. So he must have.
Yeah, well, that's why it's unflinching. It's like if I strapped you up against a haystack and said, I'm going to start throwing daggers at you. So if you knew that I was a good dagger thrower, then as the daggers are coming, like they do in the circus, right, goes right to the side of the head, you'd be like, no problem. But if the daggers are coming and you're thinking, I hope he's okay at this. He wasn't, he looked a bit spaced out last time he was doing it. So that would be, so unflinching is that it could, but I've got full faith that that's not going to happen. So that takes some power of some very strong faith, some very strong control over the mind and senses, to be able to do that, to get to the point where you're unflinching, that you don't, something looks like it's going to be terrible, but you're so convinced it's not. And you just, like Srila Prabhupada was just so unflinching, the way he went through everything. Jumped on that boat. Most of us would see the boat, right? The boat that Srila Prabhupada went on was a cargo ship. So all you could hear was the noise of the engine all the time, deafening, So to get asleep in that type of situation must have been very difficult, And he was just so, he knew he was going to be successful. He knew he was going to open 108 temples. He knew he was going to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world, So he was also Trikalagya. He was aware already that was going to happen, because Krishna can do that. There's one part in Srila Prabhupada's books where he says that sometimes Krishna can give you the position of being the Ishvara, of knowing everything. He can just put you in that position for a second or two, where you're aware of everything that's going to happen, has happened, and is happening. So the pure devotee, he can do that. Haridas Thakur knew the prostitute was already going to come. He knew because, and he said, Ramachandra Khan is a great fool, but I've stayed here because I know that if you hear my chanting and I tell you about the holy name, that you'll become a great devotee. So therefore I've waited to deliver you. So one of the benefits of being a pure devotee, apart from being free from suffering and experiencing eternal bliss, is that you're aware of the plan. And then you know exactly what to do. It's like being given the script. Well, they're going to say this, so you say that. So then you fall in with it, Does that answer the question? Does that answer the question? Yeah. Yet it's hard to marry the two concepts, being a person and being all cognizant. And that's why for Krishna, he likes to cast aside his Godhead and be like us, He just wants to be a person like us. That's why he enjoys our company more than hanging out with, because he could have all the Narayans there in Goloka. He could be playing table tennis with them because they've got two butts. So he could have a really good game with them, But it's more fun for Krishna to interact with us because we're just like persons, And he experiences more enjoyment. Because we have our independence, we independently choose to love him. We irresistibly fall in love with Krishna. And everybody has a different way that they love Krishna. And there's unlimited ways, so there's unlimited living entities. And so Krishna's pleasure is always unlimitedly increasing. Yes, so they had that culture that they would show respect even to the enemy, and ultimately it worked out good because that's what Lord Narayan wanted. Maybe if Bali Maharaj had known that this is what's going to happen, you're going to be cheated out with the nectar. But he eventually gets caught by Vamanadev. He's in charge of the entire universe, and then he happily accepts defeat.
So you say Bali Maharaj is a demon, but also a great devotee. These things almost seem contradictory.
Yeah.
But we hear the story how he sacrificed everything for Lord Vishnu, and he attained his position that he's got. Now, as these contradictory characteristics exist on the other side can you have
Yeah, not so
devotees who
much-
have demonic?
I don't know whether you'd say contradictory characteristic, because he didn't display any demonic characteristics, did he? I haven't seen anywhere where Bali Maharaj behaved in a demoniac way, other than the fact that he was the head of the demons, you know. But you don't hear of him standing on a slug as he's going down the road on a rainy day, or doing anything nasty, right? So no, his characteristics seem consistently good. Every time Bali Maharaj comes on the scene, he seems to be behaving in a very exemplary way. And for some reason, he ended up in that situation where he was in charge of the demons.
So this does seem rather contradictory, because, like, with Prahlad Maharaj, they wanted to kill him because he was different from them. He didn't have these same characteristics. He was, devoted to the Lord. He was very good. And so how could the demons tolerate a character like Bali Maharaj being their leader if they are
Well, it's interesting that
different characteristics?
Prahlad Maharaj was getting through to his schoolmates. So Hiranyakashipu was an out-and-out nasty piece of work. But it looked like, and when we saw that film, this thing, Avatar, when they saw the Prahlad, I don't know whether that was a speculation, but I suppose you could say it's consistent with his character, that he behaved in a way where he protected that boy from getting those little darts thrown at him. He stood in the way and took them. And even though they were demons, they were like, wow, that's amazing, he's such a great person to do that. And they became attracted to him, Because even in the verses glorifying the six Goswamis, it said that they were Dira Janara. Because they were non-envious, then even the ruffians were attracted to them. And Srila Prabhupada, one time he cut an apple, and this person had a quite nasty attitude toward him. And Srila Prabhupada, he had the knife and the cut apple, and he offered them both to the person. And the person took the cut apple. So even a person's demoniac, when someone treats them with love and respect, they become attracted to that, because everybody is potentially divine anyway. The demoniac qualities are only covering them, So many interesting nuances are there, and we have a tendency as neophytes to be very black and white. If he's wearing a red t-shirt, then he's okay. If he's wearing a blue one, then we can hit him on the head with a brick, or green or orange, So people, we tend to rubber stamp, he never goes to Mangalati, so he's not worth respecting. He only does 5 books a day, so he's useless. So we kind of carry that with us into devotional service. We have everybody that's wearing a black t-shirt is a demon, and if you're wearing a white one, you're a good guy, you're a devotee, you can't do anything wrong, And then some people are wearing grey t-shirts, and no one's quite sure what to do with them. Some of them are a bit darker than others, and some are a bit lighter than others. And because we're in a transitional stage right now, we're shifting from one way of life, one state of consciousness to another, then there will be like a spectrum. And it's although white is the goal and black is the thing that we're trying to get away from, there will be an intermediate stage. And that's why Krishna says he's still to be considered saintly, although he's just done something which seems really demoniac because of his past conditioning. But he still wants to be a devotee. He's sorry for what he did, and he still wants to be a devotee. And then the next verse, it says, one who looks at the devotee like that and doesn't deride him, he quickly attains everlasting peace. Interesting, yeah? That Krishna is more concerned than with the devotee that's behaved in the demoniac way temporarily. But Krishna is more concerned with, how do you see that? How do you accommodate that behavior? If you can see that he's still saintly, then you'll attain everlasting peace. So the real danger is not the display of demoniac activity that may take place temporarily, but the real danger is how do the community of devotees react to that? How do they respond? Interesting, because you would think the spotlight would be on the person who's just made a big mistake, but actually the spotlight's on everybody else that's watching you make the big mistake.
So that makes perfect sense. It's compassion and it's knowledge, and it seems, really spot on. But in particularly challenging situations when people are committing certain offences that are maybe causing harm to the work of Srila Prabhupada's mission, say if they are part of a spiritual community already and they have maybe, due to their conditioning, done some things that are potentially not acceptable, that must be a little bit of a harder situation to remain.
Well, one very wise,
compassionate,
learned devotee, one of the pillars of Bhaktivedanta Mana, Pranabandhu Prabhu, who was one of the big fundraisers, is responsible for where the mana is right now, actually. He's seen so much take place. Very advanced devotee. Him and Shruti Dharma. Shruti Dharma has left his body now, but they were the two main pillars of the whole Bhaktivedanta Mana and all the community, Yeah, Pranabandhu Prabhu and Shruti Dharma. So he says to me, I was just saying, there's a lot of contention going on now about certain issues. And he says, well, we should just get on with what we're doing and leave it to those advanced self-realized souls in the society to work out how to do it. He said, if they can't work it out, we've got no chance of doing that. And they say in Kali Yuga, even the Paramahamsas are not in agreement about what to do because the age is so confused. So we are rank and file, unless we're put into a position which is managerial, which it seems attractive from the outside, but when you're in the situation, it's described as being the chief mallard in the sitting duck club. And nobody would fancy being in that situation. You're a lot better off just cleaning the pots and passing out a few books and just keeping out the way, And just let things take their due course. And whatever mistakes are there will be part of the learning process. Lord Chaitanya's already predicted that the movement will be successful and will expand. And although it seems so unlikely that Srila Prabhupada would succeed, and it may seem so unlikely now that we will succeed, still we can have that faith that it will happen, So we shouldn't shift our focus. It's self-realization. We have to focus on that. Once we become very elevated, then we'll fully understand the plan and why this happened and why that happened. And right now we're like in the fog, Sometimes in a battle, when the soldiers become very confused, they fight against each other because they can't actually see the enemy anymore. And because they're frightened, they just lunge at anything that comes at them. So that's kind of like the neophyte stage, the Kanishta stage, where things are very unclear, very foggy. We're recovering from very, very addictive, sinful activities. And we're now trying to clear our consciousness. So in that state, then we have to be very careful we don't misidentify who the enemy is, The better thing is just to stay behind the shield of the holy name and use the weapon of Shastra to see things clearly. And like Gita Bhavana yesterday gave the class. Gita Bhavana. I think his name was Gita Bhavana. And he was saying that sometimes you can't see the situation fully. You can't really appreciate what's taken place. And some of the techniques and perspectives he was coming out with reminded me of some of the things I've read in books outside of Srila Prabhupada's. And one is a man that he would go home every day on the train at 5 o'clock, and he would have that half an hour to just read. It was a special time for him, very peace and quiet. Wasn't wasting his entire life just traveling to and from work. He could occupy it with something recreational. And on this particular day, this father was with, he had about 4 kids, and they were all jumping on the chairs and swinging around and making a real commotion. And eventually he went over to him and he said, can you quiet these brats down? And the man, he looked a bit kind of disheveled himself, and he turned around to the other man and he said, I'm so sorry, the mother's just died, and I'm not quite sure how to deal with the whole thing now. And so immediately the man's mood and everything just shifted completely, totally changed, because he saw the thing in a different way. So he would have felt really bad if he'd have got the kids thrown off the train and got the guy fined, and then found out afterwards what had actually taken place. So in the same way, if we can remain cultured gentlemen in whatever the situation is, then that will pay off for us. You never lose by showing respect. Trinada Pisanichana. Trinada Pisanichana is the Shikshastakam verse referring to Nishta. So for a person to become steady in devotional service, he has to be free of offences. And it's the offences, the Nam Aparad and the Vaishnav Aparad, that slows the devotee's progress down. So when he gets to the point where he genuinely is humble, he genuinely does feel that the devotees around him are more elevated than him, and wants to show them more respect, always making excuses for them if they turn up late, or maybe it's because they were doing extra service last night, or if they put the plug in the wrong socket and there's a small explosion. He thinks, he probably doesn't know very much about electronics, but he's trying the best he could, He's always making excuses for the person. Then he can approach the stage of Nishta very quickly, because he doesn't have any offences shadowing the chanting of the holy name. Overshadowing the holy name. So soon one of our devotees will be going into the den of Maya. Although your whole family is quite favourable, aren't they? When I was just a very young devotee, I thought I should go back to celebrate Christmas with my family. So they were going to my grandmother's in Liverpool. And I think I'd been a devotee about 4 months. And so I thought it was the thing to do, you should. And I wanted to kind of reassure them that I was okay, So I was sitting there with my mother's sister's daughter, Nina. So would that make her my cousin? Yeah. So I was sitting with her, and we were just watching a film together. I hadn't watched the film for 4 months. And so we were sitting, I think it was black and white. Meanwhile, everybody else was getting really drunk. And they were in the other room, but they exploded through into the living room. And then my mother and her sister started having a brawl in the living room. And I'd had that same experience before I became a devotee. I'd worked in a nightclub called The Cave in the Isle of Man. And I was a glass collector. And I had a vivid, direct view of what people look like when they're drunk. Because normally I don't notice it because I'm drunk myself, But when you're stone cold sober. And so there I was, I'd been a devotee for 4 months. I'd been chanting, doing everything, Tulsi, circumambulation, Mangalati, Chandamrita, the whole thing. I was like feeling quite pure. And then watching these strangers who were supposed to be related to me behaving in a really terrible way, you know. So for me, it was like a chapter of the book closing. Okay, that's it. I'm never going back to that. I'm going to be moving on from that now. It was just like a closure. Okay, so I've chosen this path, and the alternative, I fully confirmed now that I'm not missing out on anything, you know. So Krishna made that nice arrangement. So I didn't go back ever again for a Christmas with my family, you know. But funnily enough, later on, my mother already was vegetarian at that time. Later on, they met Gurudev, Srila Bhagavatam, and he convinced them to chant. And they were chanting. My dad was doing 16, I think my mum was doing 8 rounds a day, and they were reading, you know. So they came around a long way. So that's the best way we can help people that are attached to us, is that we become strong devotees. And then whenever they think of us with affection, they become purified by that. And then they start to make progress on the path as well, you know. If they see that you're very happy, then for a parent, that's what they want for the child more than anything, is that their child is happy. So if they think, he looks happy, he looks healthy, so I'm happy. It's called sympathetic joy. Have you heard of that? It's when you take pleasure in somebody else's happiness rather than your own. Sympathetic joy. And also they'll see that it's working on you, hopefully, that you're becoming a better person, you know? A cleaner person, a tidier person, a less smelly person. If you look at some of the devotees' passports, the photographs they had taken of themselves before they became devotees, you see the change, you know. There was one devotee who had these big sideburns coming down here. His eyes were really deep and had these big eyebrows. And he almost didn't look like the same person. And Shiva Rama saw, and he goes, wow, lucky you became a devotee, because it looks like you're going to become a wolf in your next life. Because a devotee, he has the vision of eternity. He's able to see to some degree by the person's physiognomy what the person's going to be in his next life. To some degree, you know. With the mentality and the attitude he's got, it's not appropriate for the human form of life. So then nature's like, okay, you're probably going to be a lot happier with a furry coat and 4 legs. So we're just going to pop you in there for now. And maybe after a few million lifetimes, we can try the human form again, see if you're any better. And meanwhile, the wheel of time. I mean, you've got Satyuga coming up. So after you've been bashed around quite a bit in the hellish planets, you'll be on your best behaviour, and then you'll be back with Satyuga. Then you'll be okay. But that's quite a long road to take. Quite an arduous one as well. But that's where the universe works. Puts you through the process. So if you want to go through the process without any intervention, okay. Kali Yuga, totally smashed. Hellish planets, Satyuga, okay. You want to be a good boy now? Yeah.
So the hellish world's full of darkness and ignorance, where there's no knowledge of God at all, no knowledge of like spiritual values. How can one make any progress from there if there's nothing to elevate their consciousness? How can one come out of the lower realms?
Well, there's 2 worlds. There's the subterranean heavenly planets where the demons go to enjoy themselves, and then there's the hellish planets where they go to suffer. So are you speaking about them all, or just the hellish planets?
Well, I'm sure with the suffering is like a kind of purification, so
Yeah.
it's burning off some of your reactions. But in the other ones where you're enjoying, if there's no spiritual knowledge, I mean, do you have to then go to the suffering hellish planets to burn off your sinful reactions? How do you get out of that?
So if they're see, the interesting thing is in the heavenly planets, they don't get any reaction. Whereas in the subterranean heavenly planets, they get a reaction for what they're doing. And then in the hellish planets, they're just getting the fruits of their reactions. And it's usually mixed. It's not, because nobody's completely 100% sinful. They always, even if it's just that they help an old lady across the road, even they say Al Capone was really nice to his family, you know. So he'll have some good karma there and quite a lot of bad karma there as well. So it'll be mixed, you know. And then Krishna says, I cast them into demoniac species life after life. So there are some people that are so stubborn that even when you punish them, they just get worse. They get even nastier, you know. And they're the ones that Lord Chaitanya was especially concerned with. That's why he wants to save them especially, because those ones are really, there's not much hope for them, you know. They're just going to perpetuate. And the more they go through nasty situations, the more they'll be nasty. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's not until someone intervenes, you know, and then they can become relieved of that cycle, which is what's happened to us. And then we can also share that with others. There go I, but for the grace of Srila Prabhupada, there go I, you know, with everybody that we see on the street, you know. So, and when we first came to Glasgow, it was the knife capital of Europe. If you were thinking of going on holiday to get stabbed, your best place was going to be Glasgow. And they had this thing, all the police put these buckets out, and they did, I forget what it's called now, we ask everyone to put their weapons in, and whatever their weapons are,
Amnesty.
that was it, yeah. They won't be, there'll be no penalty for it, you know. So they had these buckets, and they were throwing things in, they were like knuckle dusters with a knife on it, you know. So you'd stab them while you punch them in the face. And all kinds of things, you know, sawn-off shotguns. And they were throwing them all in. And then suddenly Glasgow becomes the vegan capital of Europe, because we totally hammered Glasgow with Garanga. We had Garanga everywhere, you know. We had it that all day practically people would be going past going, Garanga, Garanga. It was everywhere. So that's like such a huge purification that's taking place now in such a short space of time. So who can imagine what's going to be happening 100 years from now? If we just keep the books going out, the sound vibration going on, people will get purified. And that's what Lord Chaitanya wants. He wants to intervene. And what Kali wants, the ultimate conspiracy theory is this guy, he's black, that's how the Bible describes him as a Shudra, and he is taking pleasure in breaking the legs of Dharma. And the program is he wants to get people addicted to the four sinful activities and take them down into the hellish planets. That's his conspiracy theory. And he's doing that via this person or that one. They're just little puppets. They don't even really know what they're doing. You know, they live for such a short span of time, but the plan is extended over 432,000 years. All they get is a little flash, you know. And there's this small concession, and then Kali comes in. And so the program with Kali is, okay, those souls that are intent on having these, like we were in Soho the other day going around, I was thinking, so this is what it is. These souls are here because they're intent on denying God and living an existence where there's no daylight, where the light's just there all the time, and no night. It's just 24/7 sense gratification. Nobody can stop them from doing anything. Nothing's illegal. Everything's just, here's the drugs, here's the promiscuous activity. You can do it with who you want, when you want, how you want. it's all there for you. So they want that, and they're being facilitated, and Lord Chaitanya is like, no, no. And then eventually Kali is like, okay, you gave them a concession, now leave it to me. I'll teach them this way. Yes, Guru Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Bhoda Premanandi, Hari Bol.